in the last couple of years, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I developed a meditation practice. And one of the really surprising things to me is how much it feeds my writing practice, my writing life. And what I think it is for me more than anything is that when I'm sitting and when I am at work, and I wonder whether any of you will relate to this, you know, everything is so distracting and everything is so busy, and I'm working on my computer, and my computer is also the portal to the whole outside world. And there's so many distractions, and if it's not that, it's something else, or it's the phone ringing, or it's something that needs to be done. And it's so easy to jump up out of a moment, to not stay there. And it's precisely the moment where there is the impulse to jump out of it that the fruits will be found from staying in it. And sinking deeper. And that is a very similar feeling to what I experience in meditation. The moment that I want to get up, or I want to scratch behind my ear, or I wonder what time it is, or how long I've been doing this, or I have a thought that I really need to go write down, that's the moment that I need to stay. And that may have something to do with what I've learned.
I think that totally is an answer to my question.
Because it's increasingly for me a kind of patience and a realization. Years ago I interviewed the writer Peter Matheson, and he was probably in his mid-70s when we were talking, and he said to me about his work, about his entire oeuvre. He said, "The early novels are not worth reading." And I was a young writer, and I only had early novels. and I realized that, that with the sweep of his hand, he was dismissing more books than I had even written yet. And I couldn't imagine ever feeling that way. And now I find myself telling people not to read my first couple of novels, because I feel like I was learning how to write, in public, but that I'm not, I don't feel like they're particularly good. And working on my 8th book now, I can say the early novels aren't worth reading. The idea of continuing to evolve, continuing to, that I forget who it was who said, I think it might have been John Irving, that writers are people who can get better as we get older all our lives. And so that feeling of each book, of just wanting each book to be better than the last one, of my relationship to all of this being with myself, and with patience.
I love what you're talking about. It's about being just staying with it for the long haul. You don't really have a choice. I mean, that's what you're saying to me. The thing that I contribute to that is my thing is if somebody says something to you that hurts, pay attention to it, because that's probably going to be how you're going to grow. You take criticism that doesn't really sink in, it usually might be off base, but if it stings you deeply, it's usually because they're touching something that you need to pay attention to. I'll tell you a little story about this. Some years ago, I was involved in a A&E biography of Irving Berlin, and so it was no original music. I was just scoring Berlin's music, and it was a great project, and a lot of little stories. I had to create music that went from 1937 or 38 RKO Orchestra from the movie Top Hat, and the music had to seamlessly. Then in the film, we're in the movie, and then the scene breaks away, and then we're in a hotel room with Berlin and Fred Astaire, and they're having cocktails, but the music has to continue. So I had to take the score from the movie and make an original score that would seamlessly go from 1936 to 1990, whatever that was, and then go back to the movie. So there were a lot of issues. First of all, the key happened to be in C major. The key of C major sounded different in 1930-something than it sounds now. And that's not that complicated. Other issues, which I was fortunate enough to have great players, and it was described to me that tenor sax players, all sax players, used different kinds of mouthpieces in those days. And once we used those, it would help really a lot to create that verisimilitude. But that's not the point. The point is that later on in the film, Berlin is honored in an evening at Carnegie Hall. And everyone's there, Louis Armstrong and every great performer of the day is there, somewhere in the 60s, and this film is now we're at that point in the movie. And so I had written a piece of music, which was, I'd taken Cheek to Cheek and made it like a Nelson Riddle arrangement, and it was my best work. I mean, I had made it like Frank Sinatra, you could picture him singing, and it was just the film score, you know, just music. And I'd spent most of my time on this thing, and we got through the film, and near the end, I bring it in to screen it for the director, and he doesn't even hear the whole thing. He listens to 15 seconds of it, and he turns to me and says, "There's too much you in it." And it hit me, you know, and it's like, you know, it's like, this is the thing I worked hardest on, that, you know, but it wasn't right, and it hurt me a lot, and I had to realize that's not what this is all about. I had to understand that, that's the way he saw it. I think he was wrong. I don't think there was too much me. I think it really was more Nelson Riddle. But, you know, that thing really hurt, and I never forgot it. And I always have felt, before and since, that when you get stung, those are the things that you grow from. You got to learn from those points.
It's interesting, it's very similar to what you were just saying in a way, that you get to a place where you know you're not in control, and have to live there. Because that's where the juice is. That's the way something new is gonna happen.
Yeah, it's almost, for me, almost always, when I'm finally beginning a new piece of work, the feeling just before, immediately before, is such tension and such despair and such hopelessness. It is, it's not with optimism. I have never begun anything worth reading with a sense of optimism. It's really, it's more of a feeling of, oh, here goes nothing. It's just, I mean, why not? Okay, what the hell, because it's gonna be, you know, because it's unbearable not to, finally.
William Maxwell, you know, the writer William Maxwell, said, he was asked once if he liked writing, and he said, "I like having written." Darko, was there ever anything you started on that you thought, I can't do this? Probably not.
No.
You're a director.
It's, yeah, you do have to, you, as a director, you know, especially since I do, in general, I mean, I just directed my most intimate piece, which was with 5 actors, which says everything about me, because that's rather unusual, but, you know, comfort zone is Shakespeare plays and operas and musicals, and so, yeah, there have been tough times, because, you know, I don't want to say my pains, but I work with actors, you know, on a day-to-day basis, and some of them have liked me more than others, and the other way around, so it can be tricky, but something that I've been, going back to a previous question, something that I've been thinking about, especially in the years since I've taught acting and directing at UCSD, which I taught there for a number of years, is that it takes a tremendous amount of craft. You know, and I don't mean to sound mysterious about that, but you know, to get through a Shakespeare monologue, there are certain rules, certain things that need to be taught. But what you're ultimately doing is putting the ooze and the pus of human condition on stage, because there's nothing worse in theater than a role model. They don't generate any drama, you know? So it's like, and I believe that even Shakespeare never wrote a role model, because it's just not very interesting. It doesn't sustain itself. So you're always, you know, I have to have really, you know, some of my thoughts are benevolent, but I have to be really in touch with the malevolent side of my own nature if I'm going to figure out. I mean, last summer I directed my 2nd production of Titus Andronicus, and I'm still not done with that play. But you know, you could dismiss it and say it's cartoonish, but what it is to decapitate 2 people and then feed their entrails to their mother, you know, I have to think about things like that, and it's, you know, I just have to go to that place. And I think, you know, I think about that a lot, that everybody has great thoughts and not so great thoughts, and I love the fact that I have a perfectly safe environment to exercise those things, you know, and that, it took me a while to deal with that, but I have a very safe environment in which to explore those aspects of human nature.
And what about, were there any sort of milestone events where, sort of aha moments in your lives when you did something you didn't think you could, or you surmounted an obstacle that was there?
I'd like to just go back to your last question, and it
Right.
ties into this. Because when you said, I don't think I can do this, it suddenly, like a thunderbolt, it hit me that I said that 2 weeks ago. And I said it to my Zen teacher. We have art practice at different times of the year, and this session of art practice was old age, sickness, and death. And I have just gone through 10 months of cancer diagnosis. And so I said to him, I don't think I can do the death. I don't think I can go there again. I mean, I was there, it was so close. But I'm just kind of getting to the place now where I realize, of course, that that's where that next work will come from. And that, I mean, in a way, it is a milestone.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's the place that, yeah, I will have to go to. And it's the place that everything will scream in a way not to, but that's kind of, that's the only place that I guess there is for me to explore now. That's what it will be, that,
Why do you say you have to go there?
because if I'm going to be true to myself and in my practice and in my my sort of spiritual practice and as an artist, even if I'm saying that, but you know what? It's not even like I will just do that. I know that it will happen in my studio or in my writing. That we're not in control at all, really. So I've done enough work that I trust that process. So it will happen.
No, that's great. That thought has occurred several times about not being in control, or getting to a place where you're not in control. And
But
staying.
trusting.
Huh?
But trusting.
Yeah.
Well, I think too, we don't choose our subject matter. Our subject matter chooses us, I think. And I was just sitting here remembering being at the Litchfield County Writers Project, and Dave Heen was interviewing the poet and memoirist Honor Moore. And I don't remember the question, but I remember I was sitting in the audience and Honor said, we don't choose our stories choose us, and if we do not follow them, we are somehow diminished. And I wrote it down. It was just so, it was so what I needed to hear, and I've passed it along to students at times, not in the sense of, let it all rip and write memoirs, without worrying about their effect on people at all, but really in the sense that I think what it is, Joan Didion describes it as having a shimmer around its edges, what chooses us, what suddenly feels like this is it. You're going to write about that. That feeling of, and I think for me it announces itself as what it is. It's a story, it's a novel, it's an essay. I still have banging around inside me a play because it's only a play, and I don't know how to write a play, so I haven't done anything with it because it's a play. It's not something else that I already know how to do.
Joshua, you mentioned earlier about you used the same language about you don't have a choice.
No, that's interesting. To me, maybe, my, just my work life has been quite different in that most of the time, the stuff that I've made has been work for hire. Somebody will have a project and they'll come to me and say, can you make music for this? And one of the things that's always been a challenge for me, or actually the most fun for me, is that I have to be able to talk to music, to people who are in music that wouldn't even consider themselves in the same field. If you live in New York and you may work with people in the classical field, they're trained classical musicians, they wouldn't really know the first thing about jazz, many of them, you know, or certainly pop music or anything like that. Or then world music's a whole different category, and so it's electronic music. The more recorded music there is, the more divisive it has become. But if you're going to do what I do, you have to be able to have the language to communicate with people in all these different fields. You have to know enough about classical music to talk to the classical player. The one thing I would say about this is I was asked to do music for, there's a lot of talk now about this guy Joseph Kony, who is, you know about, is this, it's an incredible story. The short version is that he is in Uganda in the 90s, I guess it was, and he had trained children, you know, 8 to 12-year-old kids to be killers, successfully trained them into being killers. And I was involved with Hallmark Entertainment, and we made a film about this. The film, we didn't do a great job, but it was an incredible assignment for me. Can you make music for this project? And it was a long-term project, and I got to work with the National Tour Group of Uganda. And I can't believe that I had the temerity to do it, but I sent them the music over to Uganda, and then they were going to perform at Brooklyn Academy of Music. And so we had a one-day recording session in which we recorded 50 minutes of music, the whole film score. And it was one of the most unforgettable experiences of my life. So I have this group of maybe 20, 25 men and women, all different ages. The one part I'll tell you that really was astounding was I needed to record, there's a lot of, as you might imagine, it's very percussive and rhythmic, but there were some very quiet moments. And there was a solo I needed to record with a vocalist, and I auditioned them. They said, you know, let's try you. And they were very forthcoming, willing to step up and try. The version that I have, and I think I may have it on my website. It's really nice. It's short. It's 45 seconds, but there's a voice, and if you hear this voice, you're going to assume that the singer is a 70 or 80-year-old man, and it's a boy who was, I think he was 17 years old, and just the sound of this child's voice and the weight of years on this kid's life that is just represented in this 45 seconds. It was a beautiful thing to have been a part of. And it was one of these moments when I thought, well, you know, you can keep growing and learning, and I had no idea I could have done it before this thing started.
That's great. This has been the fastest hour I've spent in a long time. And we have time for some questions if any of you do. We can keep going with this all day. Yes, here.
As an actress myself, an artist, I would be very curious to hear how you experience and mix real life, maybe at the beginning of your career since you're successful, in paying the bills and substance when you were still trying to be creative and form your craft. How did you do it?
I was really fortunate, and I had a husband who was, to a large extent, supporting me and believed in that the work I was doing was important. So, I mean, I'm really grateful, but I don't have, you know, any suggestions I don't have that other experience of actually not being able to work.
My first novel I wrote while I was in graduate school, and I sold it while I was in graduate school. And so my career in terms of being able to make a living as a writer began pretty much at the beginning, which I was, you know, I've always been very aware is pretty unusual. I do, however, and furthermore, it's never been one thing. I've taught, I've written for magazines, I've taught, I've written for magazines and more. I've published books, you know, every 3 years or so, and that's been kind of how I've cobbled it together. But I've seen students who work full time. One in particular I'm thinking of who just sold her first novel that's going to have, I think, a really spectacular life as a novel. It's wonderful. And she was working full time as a book editor, and she wrote for an hour every morning before she went to work, but that hour was sacred. And it was, she wrote on the subway, she wrote at home, she so created this space where that was what she did, and she didn't let anything get in its way. And while holding down a full-time job, I had another student who was a psychiatrist and AIDS researcher who has since published 2 novels, and who had 2 kids, young kids, and would just create this, get up very, very early in the morning when the house was quiet and dark, or another friend who did it the opposite way, where it was the end of the day. But I think I've seen it be very possible to have both, and to be able to make a living and practice an art.
For me, it was impossible. And I think most people in my life were like, well, he's either going to end up being successful or on the street. It was really difficult. And there was a period where there was a buzz about me and papers were writing about me. And this was really amusing, or not so amusing, because I couldn't afford to take the subway. And I knew how far you could stretch popcorn, eggs, potatoes, and not go to sleep hungry. But I always had enough money for a cappuccino and a cocktail. So you gotta have your own you have to have your own personal sense of style to get through the day. You know what I mean? That's what matters. That's what really does, I was like, I could go without food, but I had to have a good cappuccino. So, and I think about that a lot, especially when I'm teaching. I'm always curious. I mean, right now I'm giving a chance to a Hart School student. I've given him one of the leads in The Tempest, and he's terrific, and, I'm checking with him, because it occurred to me, that he might have a work-study job and this and that and everything. And he's been kind of coughing, and I've been really, I've been checking in with him, making sure that he's taken care of, and I'm trying to figure out how I can help him out. So I do try and look out for when I can. So, and I give people a lot of advice how to stretch potatoes and popcorn and eggs into all kinds of delicious meals, because it's cheap and it goes a long way.
I would just say quickly, I have a 10-year-old and I'm a single dad, and I'm just always, I'm never not working. I mean, I always have this with me. I work every day, all the time, and except when I'm with my son. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm fully with him. I'm not working when I'm with him, although he's involved in music, so actually, that involves work too. But that's the thing. You find the time. You fit in the time. It's like the hour a day that you're writing your novel. You find the time.
And I remember the first time hearing, we'll start rehearsal at 12:30. That's 12:30 a.m. And work till 3. And they know they have to get up at 6:30. Now, you can do that when you're 18, 19, 20, but the motive is what's there, and you find a way. You find a way.
Giving yourself permission is another piece, especially for women. I find when I talk to mothers, how to take that time, that there's a deeper place. Yes, it is how to make a living, but it's also how to allow yourself to take the time away from all these things that we should be doing and could be doing to do your work. And that's really something that I think everybody ends up learning how to do as an artist.
There's also this beautiful essay by Ted Solitaroff, who was this legendary editor that he wrote, I think, in the 1970s, and it's called Writing in the Cold, the First 10 Years. And in it, he muses about what happens to some of the most talented writers that he worked with, and he muses about how some of them don't seem to be writing anymore, and some of them have disappeared, and it's not necessarily the most talented ones who survive. And it's kind of a meditation on that. And the word that he comes up with, that is the word that he attributes to the ones who stay in it, who are still writing 10 years later, is endurability. And I just really love that word, the ability to endure. And because it can be financial insecurity, it can be rejection, it can be, like every day a new indignity, something happens, there's always something. And being able to just, this combination of caring so much and having it be just this essential, this is what you do, and permission, and also this ability to endure.
There's indignities. It sucks. You know, your body fails you. It's terrible. But if you have a practice of work, you know, it's the solace in that. It's incredible. And you're ageless. You're just the same as you were. It's like Migro or the Temptations. You're right there. If you have a thing that you go back to, it does sustain you.
I love competing with myself. You know? And ultimately, I'm the only one who carries the criteria of my work within me. So, not wanting to repeat myself, wanting to get to the next level, giving myself the next aesthetic, structural, intellectual challenge. It's everything. It's that's everything. But that's, you know, I think of it that way.
What do you mean by competing with yourself?
Competing with myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Never quite feeling settled. Never quite. I wouldn't want that. You know, anything, the moment that I've tried to be very hard in the moment when I'm directing something, when it goes into previews, but already the next phase of work is being formulated, already, already the next set of shows is brewing, and, you know, and getting drawn to work of increasingly structural complexity. And, you know, certain plays, I mean, right now I'm obsessed with a Shakespeare play that nobody seems to want to do, is Henry VIII, and I've been thinking about it for years, and finally I feel like I'm setting up a co-production between two companies, but technically it's probably his most complex play, I think, and so I kind of feel like I'm ready for it.
Let's thank this incredible group of artists for a wonderful